All right, turning now to the media. That would be us. It has been 6 months since President Trump took office and heightened an atmosphere of mistrust in the media. Television reports, newspaper reports, the term fake news is still being thrown around. Has the news media done its best to gain the trust of the public, or is the public sinking deeper into their own political camps and viewing news as either left or right? It's time for a little self-analysis here, gentlemen. What do you think?
Yes to all of your questions.
Yes to all. Okay, well, let's move on to the next. Let's move on to the next topic.
I mean, I think one of the things that's interesting about this is that the hand wringing is going on while old line media are experiencing some of the biggest growth in readership that they've ever had. The New York Times
and the Washington Post
and the Washington Post are adding readers like nobody's business. Most local newspapers are also seeing smaller bumps than that. It really depends on the market and the reasoning. But there's what's good about that, I think, is that people are realizing that there is value in curated, edited, traditional media gathering, and that is different from a lot of the other things that we see that are out there on the media landscape that are dug into far more partisan and irresponsible spaces.
So you're actually just drawing the line. You're talking about print.
Well,
news media right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's the medium I work principally in. So it's the one that comes first to mind.
And the least significant medium today. I think.
Do you really think that? Do you think print is the least significant?
Well, in terms of overall reach, yes. I mean, far more people will get their news from electronic sources than from print sources. I mean, that's why we've been struggling the last 20 years, and it hasn't shifted.
But most print media are electronic now, so
they have electronic formats. But people are still getting more of their news from cable television.
So you're talking about CNN. You're talking about MSNBC or NBC, CBS.
Yeah, Washington
ABC.
Post website is competing with CNN and BuzzFeed right now for page.
Well, yeah, because what's happening to CNN is
BuzzFeed.
Been a plunge. I think clearly folks don't trust us. They don't trust us whether we're print or whether we're electronic, whether we're cable.
Yeah, but Nolan, we said this after the election. I mean, we sat and we had a whole show talking about, so people say they don't trust the media. What has the media in general, and gosh, I hate just using that large blanket because it does break down in so many different ways, but what have we done to change that perception?
We've not even tried. I think we've made it worse since the election. I think we can't blame our readers or our viewers. We have not comported ourselves very well. We've taken every piece of bait the president has dangled. We have allowed him to draw us down to his level of behavior. The mainstream press, even the New York Times, Washington Post, are getting too many things wrong. They're having to correct too many things. They're relying on
I would
anonymous
challenge
sources.
you to document that in the Post and the Times.
I would say that they might have had
absolutely speechless.
CNN has had the problem.
The Times story about the 16.
They had one story that was wrong.
They've had other stories that have.
Can you show me what those are? I mean, seriously.
Wrong. They're over-reliant on anonymous sources, and the more you use anonymous sources, the less trust you have. We're just become too hysterical in our coverage and too obsessed. I've talked before about the hierarchy of scandal. We don't distinguish between a real scandal and, oh my God, the president said somebody had a nice smile, and people are starting to turn us off. I think we have to stick to our standards.
You're painting with a really
so I think that's kind of what the problem is, because we could delineate between cable news, which is different than even the network news that you're seeing at night, which is different from your local news, which you're seeing, and that's just television.
But
and I would not compare a local television news broadcast to what the Washington Post is putting out and to what the New York Times is putting out.
It's not nearly comparable.
You look at that stuff is creeping into Associated Press reports that bias the drawing conclusions instead of presenting the facts and letting readers drive. Because I'll give you an example. After the Comey testimony, the AP ran a story third graph says now the public has to choose whether to believe a FBI director with a long and distinguished career and credibility here, or a president who's known to be a liar. I'm thinking that's sort of,
but it's
that
not.
sort of drawing conclusions for the reader, I think, is what makes people read it and say, I mean, that stopped me in the track, and I've been in the business for 40 years.
So I disagree because you have a president who has changed the way he communicates in a way that incorporates lying as an everyday tool.
You don't change your standards.
Hold on. Calling that out and pointing out that this is somebody who has a track record of untruthfulness is not bias. That's being truthful. You can't.
It's not our job to call out news stories. That's commentary.
Absolutely is.
That's opinion.
That's not
in
true.
News stories, we present the facts and let the readers draw.
But you have to give context. You have to give context, though.
Under this, behind this curtain of giving context, you've got to make sure you're not presenting your own bias. And I've seen too much of it.
So what bias?
I agree.
What bias is represented by pointing out that Donald Trump tells lies?
Basically, you're saying, at that point, we didn't know whether Comey was telling lies. I think you can.
What it did was it compared the two records of the two men.
You don't have to. It was subjective. You do not.
Why
have
is that
to,
subjective?
You do not have to say, well, gosh, we've got a guy who has this distinguished reputation, whatever, because in coming days, we found out maybe he wasn't so distinguished. I think that's the danger. You let the facts speak for themselves. And we've moved too much toward trying to push our...
Well, I do, hang on one second. I do believe you have to let the facts speak for themselves, but you also have to, when you're presenting these facts, you also have to bring back other reports and compare and say, this is why he said this statement. Like, things aren't happening in a bubble, and that's...
Yeah, but that's different than what I'm talking about. The other day,
hang on, let him finish.
The other day, the AP ran a piece that said Donald Trump tweeted out that MSNBC is biased against him without presenting any evidence to prove that. For God's sakes, you only have to watch it. And how many times did Barack Obama say Fox News is out to get me? Right. You never had the AP say without presenting any evidence.
But I think what people had a problem with, Nolan, I think what people had a problem with, though, was the way he went after personally the people who had said that.
And that's a different issue than saying than characterizing his statement as saying without presenting any proof.
A lot of what this
we have never done that before.
A lot of this
and I think we're bending over backwards to discredit.
A lot of this is a campaign of incredible false equivalency, and you have to start to wonder what the aim of that is. To compare a president who personally attacks everybody he considers an enemy, who says the most inappropriate things that he can think of, and who regularly lies to Barack Obama or to the media is really specious. I mean, there is no.
Hold on.
Hang on one second.
Standard?
Hang on. No. Hang on one second. Let him finish. Let him finish.
The standard is to point out what is happening and to put it in context. And there is no way to do that with Donald Trump without acknowledging that he is doing things and saying things that no other president has ever done. He is ignoring
Hang on.
It is entirely true. Name a time that Barack Obama ever called someone the names that this guy
there's no question in that.
Okay.
But that's what I'm saying. Are we going to fall to his level?
But we're not doing that. Pointing out that he's doing it is not falling to his level.
I think you cover the things he's doing and things he says. They speak for itself. You don't have to add all of the personal conclusions and context.
It's not
okay. Well, no, I don't think people. Hang on. I don't think people are adding their personal conclusions. I think the blurring line is because you're hearing a Washington Post report on CNN, and then you've got 5 people who are talking about it, and people are disseminating that information, hearing people's opinions, reacting to a report. That's what I think is the continuing problem of how people are disseminating.
There's factual conclusion is not bias.
There's a In that case, I mean, the facts are subjective, and the conclusion is subjective.
Are facts subjective? Our facts are facts. Facts have to be facts.
That is the campaign that is underway, is to make facts seem subjective. You sound like the White House.
Hang on, guys. We only have a short time left.
You sound like the White House.
There's a clear reason.
No. You have alternative facts.
No, he doesn't.
I mean, if you look at this, and the way and the relentless nature of this, where everything the president says or does becomes a huge scandal, I think
you
the
have to be
public
careful
turns
about
us
who you're
off.
talking
I
about.
don't
Who's
think it
doing
becomes
that.
a
It's
huge
not
scandal,
everybody.
but the way he
It certainly
communicates
does.
is unprecedented.
Of course.
Is it unprecedented, and it is our
And
job
the
as the
way-
media to
to
cover
point
it.
that
We
way-
do have to stop the
The way
hand-wringing.
we're covering him is unprecedented.
All right, and
I've
we're
never seen-
going to have to.
I've
We
never
are
seen
going to have to
anything like
continue
this.
this discussion
Yeah.
at another
That is untrue.
at another time. We will continue the
Certainly.
discussion at another time. I'm going to have to leave it
Burr
there.
versus
We
Jefferson.
just ran out of
Madison
time.
versus Jefferson.
I'm going to have to cut your mics. Thanks to Nolan and Steven, and of course, thank
Adams
you to
versus
watching.
Jefferson.
Find MiWeek on Facebook and Twitter. Cut his mic during the week, and make sure you come back next Thursday and see us. I'm Christy McDonald. We'll see you next time.